Today's episode of the Game Time Guru is being brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Make sure to check it out. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. Make sure you don't miss today's episode because I'm bringing on a sports talk show host here from ESPN Boise. He's going to share his story. You're going to love it. This is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and today my guest is Alex Gold from ESPN Boise's The Drive. Alex, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Glad to be on.
Man, the pleasure's all mine. I'm glad to have you on the show. And the majority of my listeners are from the Treasure Valley, so this Boise area, even though I have listeners all across the country, in Canada, and even over in Europe, but I have a lot of listeners in the Treasure Valley who know who you are, right? They listen to sports radio. I got sports fans listening to the show. But I want to take this opportunity to get to know you better. So where are you from, Alex, and where did you go to school? Let's start there.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm from Kansas City, grew up in Kansas City, and up until moving out here to Boise, I mean, that's where I've lived my entire life prior, and went to school about 40 minutes or so from where I grew up at the University of Kansas. So that's in Lawrence, Kansas, majored in broadcast journalism out there, and kind of knew at that point in time when I was in college that I wanted to get certainly into sports media. And as my time in kind of college developed, I realized, all right, I want to get into radio. That's where my passion is. That's what I want to do for a living.
Right on. And before college, Alex, did you ever have any like radio gigs or anything like that where you could actually find your voice?
Right. So kind of interesting is the high school I went to Olathe Northwest, which was a fairly new school at the time, and they kind of had specialized programs within the high school. So, for instance, one side would be maybe aerospace and engineering. Yeah, there's no way I was
right.
doing aerospace and engineering. By far not smart enough for that. So that wasn't going to happen. The funny story is they had an e-communication program, which had a variety of things within that, fields within that, including graphic design and video game design. Okay, I was a complete video game nerd in junior high and heading into high school. So I wanted to design video games, learned that, oh yeah, you got to be able to draw and be able to do that. So I can't draw at all. So I quickly was like, well, I'm already here. I love sports. They've got a student TV station at the school. Got involved with that. And I had already been doing on my own time a podcast. Again, going back to how nerdy I was with video games, I was doing an Xbox podcast, and I was reviewing games. Companies would send me games and products to review, and I did a weekly podcast about Xbox. So that's kind of how I started, I guess, the on-air component. And then I knew when I went to college that I thought I wanted to do television, to be honest with you. And I did TV, or student TV station in college, but then I also did radio and interned at a station in Kansas City and fell in love with radio on that internship and realized, okay, I thought I wanted to do TV, but no, radio is what I like. I like being able to share my opinion and also not be limited to just, 2 minutes on a nightly sportscast.
Right on, man. So what I really like about your story, Alex, is the fact that you mentioned podcasting, because for me, obviously, I'm doing my sports podcast. That's what we're doing right now, is we're interviewing for the sports podcast. And I did that because I wanted to find my voice and I wanted to share my passion with the world. And while it's not a video game podcast or anything like that, I do talk about esports from time to time, but it's not a video game podcast. It's a sports podcast. I do get the opportunity to find my voice and share my passion with the rest of the world. Now, what I want to know, though, Alex, is I want to know something about you and the sports background, right? Did you ever compete in any sports growing up?
Right. No. So, I mean, not in high school even or anything. Like any kid growing up, I played, soccer and basketball and baseball, but I didn't play anything past, I think, 7th or 8th grade, something like that. So, no, I just kind of had a passion for sports, grew up going to football games. My family had season tickets for the Chiefs. Grew up going to Royals games, and so I grew up going to sporting events and loved it, and found a way. Okay, my love and passion for sports. Obviously, I'm not gifted enough to play them, but I want to still be involved with sports, and so that's kind of where for starters, kind of where everything came about. And the interesting thing with what I do now and with our show is, a lot of people say, and I get a lot of people that are like, I'll tell them what I do for a living, and a lot of people say, oh, I know a ton about sports, and I, that's great. Obviously, you got to have some knowledge of it, but that is so not, quite frankly, the most important thing, even, right? I mean, of course, you have to have knowledge of it, but can you be entertaining? Can you relate to people? Can you tell you bring your personal life, your everyday life into your show and let people feel like they're part of your life? Because just because you can rattle off a bunch of stats, that on the radio, that doesn't go over well, quite honestly. There are jobs where that does. I mean, it's great to be knowledgeable, use stats to support your opinion, but a lot of people, there's people way more knowledgeable about sports and can go through the history of stuff that happened 30 years ago way better than I ever would. But that's not what sports talk is.
What's interesting about that is when I told all these people that I was doing this interview with you, they were stoked because a lot of my friends, my close friends, they really like your show, and they love The Drive with Joey and Gold because they know that they feel like they know you. They always talk about how they feel like they know you, and I think that's because that speaks to the fact that you have, related to your listeners, which is awesome. It's a huge part of, drawing attention to your show and marketing. You're able to relate to your listeners, and you can relate to them on a personal level, and people feel like they know you. Now, Alex, let's talk about your experience from the time that you graduated college till now where you're working for ESPN Boise. What happened in between that time? Did you work anywhere before you came here, or was this your first job out of college?
Right, yeah. So I had been working most recently prior to coming out here in Topeka, Kansas. So that was my second job out of college. My first job out of college was in Wichita, Kansas. I was doing a morning show there. I was there for just a year doing sales as well. We don't have enough time to go through the story of that first experience, and it was an experience that probably made me better in the long run, but some things way out of my control there in Wichita. And so I went to Topeka, which was a little bit closer to home. Wasn't a sports station, but it was a well-respected station. I was doing a 2-hour show at a news station for sports, and fortunately that was when the Royals had their World Series run, so I was very fortunate to be in the locker room after the Royals won the AL pennant and got sprayed with champagne and have some great memories from that spot there. But quite honestly, I wanted to get to a sports station where sports was a priority, where I was doing more than a 2-hour show. And so fortunately, this opportunity came about. And so now I do, as you know, a 4-hour show with Joey on the show called The Drive. And I've been out here for about 18 months or so, and it's been fantastic. It's been terrific. Boise, pleasantly surprising. I think a lot of people, like anywhere, just like people when they hear I'm from, the Midwest and from Kansas City, people assume that I live on a farm, right? And of course, that's not the case. And out here, everybody feels, if I tell people I'm in Idaho, they think it's just potato farms or whatever, right? And of course, that's not the case either here in Boise. Boise is a great town, and I've had a ton of fun here in Boise, and the show and the station and interacting with listeners has been incredible. It's a special place with some special people, and we try to have fun every single day on our show, and I feel extremely grateful to be able to talk sports for 4 hours a day and have a great time. And it's one of the best jobs you can possibly have. You
are literally working the sports fans' dream, Alex. You have the best job in the world. Now, speaking of jobs, like I always wanted to be a sportscaster. I want to be a sports talk show host, just like Stuart Scott. Now, he has a book that's out called Every Day I Fight. He wrote it before he passed away, and it's one of the most inspirational books I've ever read. Now, if you want your free Audible download for your audiobook, you can head on over to audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru for your free audiobook. You can read it there, listen to it on your way to work, listen to it while you're at work, listen to it at the gym. It's called Every Day I Fight. It's Stuart Scott's whole story about his entire life. I promise you, if you're a sports fan, you want to read this, make sure to use that link. Again, it's audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. Now, Alex, when it comes to your day-to-day working experience, I kind of want to get a feeling for what your day-to-day is like. So when you come into the office, what time do you need to get in? How does the preparation work for your 4-hour show that you're going to be doing every day? What goes into it?
Sure, and every host will have a different method of how they prep for their show. But I joke with people because a lot of times they'll say what I do for a living, and that's by the way how you're doing something that's fun, and how fortunate you are when. And I say, I host a radio show, and if I said, I'm an accountant, usually the conversation would end there. But I tell people I host a radio show, and everybody sounds intrigued and excited about it. That's how I think. Sometimes you forget how lucky you are. People are excited to hear about what you do for a living. Sometimes people, they tell you what they do for a living. You're like, oh, okay, and that's it. But most people are pretty interested in kind of how you go about your job. And no, we don't just show up at 1:55 and do the show. We get in around 9:30 or 10 on average. Depends if we've got some recorded interviews to do or whatnot. But in a market this size like Boise, there's a lot more that we do besides just the show. If you get to a major market, a lot of times your focus is only the show. Here, Joey and I, we've got other tasks to do, stuff that's behind the scenes with just to keep the station running, and with maybe helping out sales staff, meeting with clients and that kind of thing. But we plan our show throughout the day, and sometimes we plan the night before. So to peel back the curtain a little bit, we use just Google Docs, which is great because we can share on our phone and both go in and edit our rundown. So we know what we're talking about. Now, we're not necessarily saying what our opinion is in that, right? Because we want to have that natural reaction on air. I don't want to know always what Joey's opinion is on a given topic. You want to have that natural conversation. But we know, for instance, you name the last week or so where it seems like we've had all kinds of big news come across, and let's say let's say something breaks at 2:15 in the show. You got to be flexible to move stuff around. So it's not, okay, hey, I had this scheduled at 2:30. We've got to talk about it. No, you move stuff around as it warrants. And the more you do a show, especially in the given market you're at, you know what you should lead your show with. You lead what you're most passionate about and also what your listeners are most passionate about. In some markets, that is the NBA. In some markets, that's Major League Baseball. In this market, right, if it's something Boise State or Idaho Vandal related, that's probably what we're going to lead with most times. Unless the last week or so we've had some crazy stuff where, the big sports gambling topic, of course the anthem stuff, right? Those are no-brainers. Those are gimme days, if you will, in terms of what to lead your show with. And, as we get into June, July here in Boise, where we don't have a Major League Baseball team, these are kind of the dog days of summer, and this is where your creativity kind of shows and where honestly, you can kind of separate yourself from other hosts and other shows that aren't as creative, maybe that are set in their ways a little too much. Now's the time where you can get more creative. You have to get more creative, especially in this market where there's not, again, let's talk about the Boise State football game and have some different discussions about that. There's really not a whole lot going on here at this point in time of the year here as we get into June and July.
I like how you mentioned the creative side of things, because I've noticed as I'm driving through, driving in my car, going around, I hear radio ads. Obviously, if I'm listening to ESPN Boise, I hear the radio ads on how, you can listen to the show on Amazon Alexa, and you can listen to the show on Google Home. And, that's another marketing strategy, is showing people how they can listen to it, because there's just different ways to, receive the content that you're producing. And then I've noticed that you and Joey, for the drive, you've started implementing Facebook a lot. So you have like the Facebook pre-show for anybody who's following you guys on Facebook, and then there's also the Facebook live stream of the show itself for those who want to actually visually watch it. I know that Gary Vaynerchuk mentioned the importance of that. Some people want to watch it, some people want to solely just listen to it. But yeah, you guys are implementing a lot of strategies to try to breach a different market, I think, because here in the Valley of Boise, and I'm sure it's the same in other areas, we have these well-established, sports talk shows that have been around for some time, so they have some credibility. So you guys have to find new ways to market yourselves to, gain some exposure here. There's a little bit of competition, and I just really like how you guys are doing that. And can you expand a little bit on the, creative nature and the creative angle that you're taking with the new technology?
Right. Yes. So we, radio in general, not even just sports talk. You're trying, you're trying to find ways to reach your audience, right? Everybody, we live in such a different world now, just how fast paced it is, and everybody's on the go, and people aren't going to spend, X amount of time or put a lot of effort into finding ways to listen. So you want to make it as easy as possible for your listeners, your audience, to find your show, whether that be, of course, just terrestrial radio in terms of on their FM dial in their car. But as we realize, more and more people are out and about, and whether it's their smartphone and you want to have an app for them to listen, or Nest, of course, with the more of these smart setups in people's houses, which that number is going to continue to increase. I mean, pretty soon, in a couple of years, everybody's going to have an Alexa-type device in their house. I mean, it's just going to be a no-brainer. And so you want to, you want to obviously be ahead of the curve on that and try to establish that and give people an option. Maybe they don't have an option elsewhere to do that. And, just also, we're a little bit younger show, right? I mean, you listen to the show, so our style of the show is going to be different than others. And, that's kind of how we decided to go, even with our Facebook Live videos ahead of time. And it's a good way to kind of tease our show and reach people. And now it's so much more than just radio. I mean, you look at any radio station, especially in the bigger markets, it's not just your show now. It's blogging after your show, before your show, on the weekends. Not just podcasting your full show, but podcasting, the quick hits, if you will, of the day. And because people aren't going to sit and listen to a full hour of your show. That doesn't happen, right? There may be a select few people that do that. Most people are not listening that long. So you want to, on the podcast front, right, you want to be able to give them kind of the best of that day, the nuts and bolts of that day. And technology is huge. That's why, social media, you see how much we try to interact on that, even when we're not doing our shows. You want to always be involved in the conversation, right? You want to be involved in the conversation. And I feel like Joey and I are pretty accessible to our listeners. We want people to be part of our lives, part and feel like they know so much about us. And I think social media allows you to do that a lot more.
For sure. And one thing I wanted to bring up here as we're getting close to the end of the interview, I wanted to talk about how you guys relate. Let's go back to that, how you relate to your listeners. I just wanted to bring up a memory I had. One time I was listening to the show, and you guys had headed down, I think it's to the Mountain West tournament for basketball in Vegas, and you guys were discussing, after the tournament, you were talking about your trip. You and Joey went down, and somebody said something about, like, getting a speeding ticket, and I don't even know if that's true, but it was so funny to me. Was that even true?
Oh yeah, no, that happened. No, and that's the thing. We try to be. You have to be genuine on the air, right? I think in radio, right, are there times where you have what they call bits, of course, right, where stuff is where you have some bits and you have some fun, and it can be manufactured, right? We had I think Jimmy Butler, right? I don't know if you remember a year or so ago, Jimmy Butler, when he got traded, and he put his voicemail, his phone number out on Twitter. And so we called his phone and acted like we were doing an interview with him. So those are bits, right? But as far as our personal story, when Joey talks about his life and him and everything going on, like that's legit, man. That's legit. That's us trying to, show, everybody goes through some of the same stuff. And that's an example driving down to Vegas where, we're driving and I was speeding and definitely got pulled over, definitely got a ticket. So that wasn't intentional. Believe me, I didn't want to pay the ticket. But it did provide some show content. And that's the thing. When you're not on the air, anything you do in your everyday life, man, is show content. I'm a big believer. Obviously, you have to have some stuff that's off limits in your personal life, but we're pretty darn open. And it's usually what, honestly, we get the most feedback on. We can have what we feel like is the best segment of the day on us and have a great sports take and put some good thought behind it. And you may not get much reaction to that. But we're talking about me getting a ticket or, Joey, in a line at a food place and the baby thinks he's pregnant in front of him, which was a true story, by the way. That stuff gets a ton more reaction, right? Because it's just everybody has an opinion on that kind of stuff. And that's why we talk, today on the, not today, but any day on the show, we talk about food or whatever it may be. Everybody's got an opinion on that kind of stuff. So we get more interaction on that. Of course, sports is our focus, but our show is so much more about sports, and that's how sports talk is going. You don't talk sports 100% of the time on your show. You got to have fun and talk about life and kind of what's going on that most people can relate to.
For sure, man. It's the authenticity factor, and that's what we respect about you guys. And now, Gold, I want to ask you a question. Where do you see yourself going in the future? I want to know that. The listeners want to know. I want to know. Do you see yourself staying in Boise, working for ESPN Boise, or do you want to maybe breach a bigger market, or maybe go back home? I know you've mentioned that before in the past. So where should we be looking for Alex Gold in the future?
Sure. Well, first off, I do love Boise. I was very surprised in a good way, even when I came out here for my interview back in 2016. And just the growth, as everybody knows, it's growing like crazy. I know some people joke about that. They don't like it's growing, but it is growing like crazy, whether people like it or not. And it's been an incredible place to live. It really is. I mean, it's a young, there's a fairly young community as well. It's, more and more people are moving in, and the growth is incredible. Plenty of stuff to do. I'm not a huge outdoorsy guy, but it's kind of, allowed me to do that a little bit more than I would have back home, certainly. And yeah, the scenery is great, and the people are special. It's a special, special place. And so no, I love it out here. It's not one of those where sometimes you go to a place and man, I can't wait to get out of here. No, that's not the case at all. I love Boise and what we're doing with the show and everything out here. But it's no secret. Also, I think anybody that talks to me that knows, at some point I would love to get back to my hometown. I think it's not a secret at all. I'd love to get back to Kansas City and do a show at some point in my career there. Do a show in your hometown would be incredible. A lot of people, their dream job maybe is New York or Chicago or whatever. But for me, truly, Kansas City is one of those. I think it'd be incredible to be able to do that in your hometown. But as far as when and all that, who knows, man? At some point, of course, there'll be a time. But right now, I'm enjoying what we're doing here at ESPN Boise.
Awesome, man. Well, we love you here, and I really appreciate you joining the show. Your story is extremely motivating, especially to somebody like myself who, basically wants to be in that same career field, and I'm trying to take the steps to get there eventually one day. But, it's just always motivating hearing people's stories like yourself because you can see that somebody else did it. So I appreciate that, man. It's an awesome story.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. No, I appreciate that. And anytime I enjoyed it, I always enjoy coming on and kind of sharing my story, and as others have shared their story with me. And everybody, as you know, everybody does have a different path that they take. There's no direct route to get to a certain point, but I'm certainly fortunate to be doing kind of what I love. I think anybody, if you're doing what you love, you're extremely blessed to be able to do that. And certainly right now, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. But yeah, keep going. I know, obviously I was looking at your podcast and stuff, and it seems like you're obviously really passionate about that. And that's the key. You got to be passionate about what you're doing.
Absolutely, man. And one more time, Alex, I appreciate you joining the show, taking time out of your busy schedule and, sharing your story with the listeners to kind of educate us on what the day-to-day is like of a sports talk show host, where you came from, what you do every day, and what goes into it. It's really helpful for all of us. We all enjoyed it. So, if you guys want to listen to Joey and Gold, The Drive on ESPN Boise, make sure to tune in to 99.1 from 2 to 6 every day. You can check it out there. You can go onto their Facebook page of ESPN Boise. You can listen to the live stream there or watch the live stream there. And you can also go to the website and check it out there. There's all sorts of ways to find the show, so make sure you listen to it so you can hear more of the personal stories that Joey and Gold share with everybody to basically relate to the listeners like you heard about today. Now, you guys know the drill. Make sure to tune into the show. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, any podcast outlet basically out there. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you leave a review and share it with all your friends, and we'll be talking to you guys next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.